The liberals are really proud of their no kings mass tantrum, but I'm still not exactly sure what they accomplished. Last time I checked, the majority of the American people, over 77 million, voted overwhelmingly not only for all of those aforementioned things, but for Donald Trump himself. But in the spirit of Charlie Kirk and the desire to learn, to grow, and to discuss, it is Liberal Tuesday, and you know what that means. So, on Saturday, millions of misfits, mostly of the old, ugly, and pale variety, gathered across the country for their version of a social hour to protest the King of the United States. And I guess it worked, because we don't have a king today. But to be accurate, we didn't have a king on Friday or Saturday or any day since 1776. But it's just like libs to take credit for something they did not do. It is true, though, the libs don't have a king, none of us do. But they also clearly do not have mirrors, or soap, or dermatologists. What else did I miss? Yes, a clear goal. Can anyone tell me what the point of their mass protest was exactly? They call President Trump a king, but running for office 3 times, winning twice, the second in a landslide fashion with the Electoral College, the popular vote, and all 7 swing states, doesn't seem very king-like to me. What else? He's securing our border. He's enforcing immigration law, renegotiating trade deals, lowering taxes, no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. That doesn't sound like something a king would do. He's working tirelessly to bring law and order to dangerous and crime-ridden hellholes. He's ending wars, brokering historic peace deals. That's king behavior. Last time I checked, the majority of the American people, over 77 million, voted overwhelmingly not only for all of those aforementioned things, but for Donald Trump himself. So yay for you guys. You got 7 million to use up a Saturday walking around with poster boards and BO. You're not as robust as you think you are. And I think it's great that President Trump trolled you with memes and with videos. Many of you are calling for his death and celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So yeah, memes are what you deserve, quite frankly. I love it. But in the spirit of Charlie Kirk and the desire to learn, to grow, and to discuss, it is Liberal Tuesday, and you know what that means. Joining me now is host and executive producer of the Young Turks, Anna Kasparian, who, by the way, I've really enjoyed all of our conversations we've had over the last several years. And I know that you've slightly changed some of your perspectives on things, but I don't know if you were a no king supporter or not. And I didn't want to look specifically because I wanted to be surprised. So you have to break it down for me.
I'm indifferent. I don't feel one way or the other about it. I just kind of saw it as a little bit of a fruitless effort because there wasn't a specific ask. It was more, in my opinion, a way for liberals to kind of get together and express their disagreements, various disagreements with the Trump administration. For me, I think obviously protecting the right to assemble is important, even if I don't necessarily fully support the protest. In this case, it's not that I don't support it. If I'm going to go out and engage, I want to make sure that there's like a real ask and a real organized strategy in place, as opposed to just kind of getting together and airing grievances. That being said, airing grievances, I think, is valuable. People going out there and protesting whatever issues they have with the government, whether it's state and local or federal, is important. And yeah, I was fine with it. I don't really care. As long as there aren't riots happening, as long as people aren't getting hurt, I don't really care.
Yeah, I guess that's my thing too. I mean, they're more than welcome to go and do it. I just think for me, this just falls so flat for the Democrat Party. I think they're waiting to end the shutdown because they wanted to make a point with these no kings protests. And I don't know how long they'll hold on to this. I think they're probably desperately looking for some kind of an off-ramp right now, and they wanted to wait and let this breathe. But we've seen people assemble and do this so many times over the Trump presidencies. And I don't really know, other than getting out a big crowd of people, I don't know what it accomplishes, and I don't know what the message is. And when you see the interviews, and I understand that some of the interviews are meant to be making fun or poking fun at protesters. But when you see the interviews and you see independent journalists out there saying, like, why are you upset or what are you protesting? I didn't see many folks that had a clear, concise answer. It was just, I don't like Donald Trump. Like, we get that. But what is your party going to do to advance anything other than hatred for Donald Trump? I didn't see it.
The only time mass protests really made a difference in this country is when you had higher levels of unionized workers who were able to organize and essentially have a plan in place that goes beyond simply gathering, protesting, and then going home. And so, look, even when it comes to the right, I remember when the right was protesting some of the COVID-related lockdowns. In some red states, sure, they lifted lockdowns, but on a federal level, a lot of what they were protesting remained in place. You can't really push through policies that you want, whether you're on the left or the right, unless you have a well-planned, organized effort to do it. That being said, I want to note that various people who are part of the No Kings protests, I have watched those interviews, by the way. Some of them, yes, I think, intentionally seek out some of the more wacky individuals who attended in order to kind of make a comment about the platform's disdain for the, protest in general. But if you listen to some of the substantive interviews that took place, people did have legitimate concerns. And in fact, some of those concerns are starting to be shared by some on the right as well. We did a story yesterday on TYT about how, with this massive infusion of taxpayer money going to ICE, basically the administration is looking to expand ICE's roles within the United States to go beyond simple immigration enforcement. So one of the things they want to do is start putting together groups of agents that monitor the social media of Americans, of everyone in the country 24/7 for national security risks. Now, obviously that brings up issues with privacy and, certain freedoms that Americans enjoy essentially being violated, which is why for the first time you're seeing some on the right, express concern about the policy. And I'm happy to see that, because I do think there's a possibility for the government to become too intrusive into the personal lives of Americans. And I don't think it's really in the jurisdiction of ICE agents to be monitoring American citizens.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that if that's in fact the plan. I haven't necessarily heard that, but I take you at your word. I guess I would say ICE agents have plenty to do. We've got millions and millions and millions of illegal aliens in this country. So, even as quickly as they're working now, they've got plenty to do to carry out immigration enforcement. I'm with you, though, on the free speech stuff. I didn't even like it after, of course, the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. I didn't like some of the things that our, AG Pam Bondi said about, we're going to be targeting people with that say hate speech and all that. I didn't like that either, because I think that that's too far. But I will say, aside from it being protected speech, I do want to play just some video. This is getting a lot of attention, and I realize that this might be a fringe person, but this person's also reportedly a school teacher who's mocking the assassination of Charlie Kirk, pointing to her neck. And, this video has gone viral for good reason. I understand that that's not representative of everybody that showed up at the No Kings protest, but I don't know. Right now, I think the left, the burden of proof is on them to show the American people that they don't condone this. And with them refusing to ask Jay Jones to drop out in Virginia, it just feels like maybe they're not doing enough when it comes to behavior like this.
Jay Jones should drop out in Virginia. And I'm saying that with my whole chest. I'll get back to the crazy lady mocking an assassination in a second. But calling for the death of the children of your political opponents is absolutely abhorrent and disgusting. And I'm sorry, but you can't, on one hand, it doesn't matter what political side you're on. And honestly, I've kind of transcended past seeing politics as one side or the other. I think there are a lot of areas where the left and the right, and I'm talking about the electorate, can find commonalities to work together. And that's what I really want to focus on. But if you still see American politics through the lens of left versus right, you can't be someone on the left who argues that the individuals within that young conservatives movement that got, their Signal chat leaked, all of them should lose their jobs, all of them should resign. But when it comes to Jones, it's totally fine. It's not a big deal. It was a private conversation. No. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And for me, I do think that people are capable of evolving, and I do not like going back to texts or tweets or anything from like a decade ago to judge who someone is today. That being said, that text exchange wasn't that long ago, and I draw a very clear red line when it comes to wishing death upon people, especially children.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. And I would also say that I think that those text messages, the young Republicans, I get it that they're young people, and sometimes young people say stupid things that they don't actually believe for shock value to one another. But I thought it was disgusting, and I thought it should have been more condemned. I was actually a little bit disappointed that our vice president didn't condemn it more. I think he said, obviously Jay Jones is worse. And I think that Jay Jones, being somebody who's running for office to be the highest law enforcement officer in the land in Virginia, I think that there should be more weight put there than a stupid group chat. But I also think that that was disgusting, and I don't want that representative of my side or my movement at all, especially when there are so many great young conservatives out there that are in Turning Point USA chapters and other movements that are peaceful and respectful. So I appreciate that you and I agree on that. I also want to talk about Zohran Mamdani, and I don't know how you feel about him, but there's some concerning things here. And I watched the debate last week, and looking at it from someone's perspective who doesn't, I tried to look at it as somebody who lived in New York that wasn't as read into all of his past as I am. And I thought, wow, this guy is dangerous because he sure sounded good. And I think people listening to it that are frustrated about affordability and other things, I think they would have listened to him and said, he's not so bad. And I think he is that bad, though. So I'm wondering your take on his performance and if you would like to see him win the race in New York.
Well, when you look at the contenders, I would never vote for Cuomo in a million years. And Sliwa doesn't appear to have a chance. So, and out of the three, I do think that Mamdani would be the better, candidate, a better mayor. I'm curious what you don't like about him, because it really depends on who you're talking to. And when it comes to the political establishments, whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans, by the way, they seem to have a lot of hate toward him because of the fact that he hasn't expressed fealty to Israel, which as a mayoral candidate, I don't even know why that's something that's even being asked of him or any mayoral candidate. But if you have issues with particular policy proposals, I'm super curious which ones, because I actually think some of his policy proposals are a little shaky. And I'm wondering if we have similarities there.
Yeah, there's a lot of policy proposals that I think are a little shaky. And I would say this, I don't think it's that he needs to bend the knee to Israel. If that's not his thing and that's not, where his allegiance lies, then I understand it. And I don't think that it necessarily should. It should be to the United States of America and to New York City. I think what's concerning about him is some of his past rhetoric and, the failure to condemn, globalize the Intifada and some of his shaky statements there when you've got the largest Jewish population in the world outside of Israel in New York City. I do think at some point you need to address the things that you've said in the past. And speaking of, social media posts that were not that long ago, his social media posts from 2020, 2021 are very concerning. And I know that he's trying to clean that up now, but I think it's really hard to go from the NYPD is racist and they're not for queer liberation and all this stuff to, no, I respect them, and make that leap. It feels a little disingenuous. He was asked how he got there, and he didn't give a clear answer on that. And as far as his policy proposals go, I think it sounds great to say we're going to have free buses and we're going to have grocery stores and we're going to have childcare and all those things. But when it comes to how are you going to pay for it, and his only answer is raise taxes, but he doesn't have the power to do that, I think he's making a lot of false promises that unfortunately people are going to fall for. And I'm sure you probably share some of the same concerns.
Oh, totally. I mean, look, there's a lot that he has proposed that I do like. Well, it's really about the devil in the details, right? So I was first and foremost worried that he was going to cut the police budget. And we did that in Los Angeles in 2021. When I say we, I mean the city council. They cut the police budget to the tune of $150 million. And as a result, taxpayers in the city ended up spending far more on policing because we didn't have enough sworn officers to carry out the duties necessary in a city as big as Los Angeles. So the remaining sworn officers had to work extra overtime hours, which costs a lot more. And so it's not economically sound policy, but also it led to increased wait times if you call 911 and you need a police officer to show up. So I was actually very worried that he was going to follow in the failed footsteps of the LA City Council. And he has reeled in some of the anti-police rhetoric. And what he's actually proposing now, which I fully do support, I think this is a smart policy, rather than getting rid of cops, he promised not to fire or lay off a single police officer, NYPD police officer, NY police officer. And then in addition to that, he wants to add social workers within the department to go to calls alongside the sworn officers if it's like a mental health emergency. I think that's a smart idea. But also, yeah, I mean, how are you going to pay for it? If you're planning on raising taxes, you're going to need a lot more buy-in. You can't do that unilaterally. Obviously, you're going to need, policymakers and lawmakers locally to agree with you on that policy. And I think he's charismatic enough to maybe accomplish that. When it comes to the free buses, though, I'm not ideologically against free buses. It's just that the way the public transportation is funded is mostly through people paying their fares. So I'm okay with subsidizing fares for low-income individuals. But if you don't have a real policy in place to help fund and maintain the public transportation, that can kind of end up being disastrous. So I have areas with him where I agree, areas where I disagree. But overall, the globalized intifada thing, he actually has finally come out and condemned it. I think it was like a huge, ridiculous wedge issue that in the end of the day doesn't really matter. He's not in any way hateful toward the Jewish community. In fact, the majority of Jewish New Yorkers supported him in the mayoral race, in the primary specifically. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't really get the vibe that he's a hateful guy. I do get the vibe that he's very idealistic. And sometimes having an idealistic mind as someone who's going to lead a big city could have some serious repercussions. So I would say he needs to proceed with caution and look to other big blue cities that implemented similar policies that maybe didn't work out and recalibrate. So these solutions actually do end up being solutions in New York.
Yeah, I just don't see wealthy New Yorkers. He can't do it anyway, but even if he were to miraculously convince Hochul that we're going to just raise all these taxes and all this, I don't see the rich and wealthy. I don't see all of them staying there. I'm sure some will because they love New York, but I see a lot of them leaving because why would they shoulder that burden? They don't have to. They're rich. They can go to West Palm Beach and the weather's nicer. Right? I don't see that being just a viable solution to pay for everything. And some of the things that he's said do concern me. I know he's playing cleanup now, and it's weird to me. It's like, at first, when he did that interview with Martha McCallum last week, like he wouldn't condemn Hamas when he was asked repeatedly. He just wouldn't say it. And then he gets to the debate and then he'll say it a little bit more. It's like he realizes that he has to be a little bit stronger in some of his language. And I just don't think it comes from a genuine place, and that concerns me. But I'm also curious what you think about him becoming kind of the face of the Democrat Party. When you don't actually have a leader, then the leaders are going to be Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Jasmine Crockett. And I know that the right loves that because I think if those people are going to be the face of the Democrat Party so far removed from especially middle America and the swing states, that's great for Republicans. I don't think it's so great for Democrats.
I think AOC is actually making a huge miscalculation that I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Maybe you'll be the first on the right to report on this, but AOC has started to make a completely different political calculation. And it appears to me that she's trying to ingratiate herself with the old guard Democratic establishment as she potentially and very likely seeks higher office. So I see her as someone who's actually significantly moderated her views, whereas the success or lack of success of Mamdani's mayoral leadership is really going to determine whether his brand of leadership is going to essentially be the identity of the Democratic Party. Right now, there's pretty much a fight for the identity of the Democratic Party. And I think the old guard establishment variety is really losing a lot of favorability with Democratic voters, which is why you're seeing Schumer put up this fight, by the way, when it comes to the government funding bill. But with Mamdani, that's why I say he needs to look at some of the cities who have implemented similar policies that failed so he can recalibrate and do this in a smart, nuanced way so it actually works. Because if his policies don't work, if things actually end up worsening on the ground in New York City, the Democrats are fully cooked. I don't really know what the identity of the Democratic Party is going to be. And I honestly think the best way to move forward is to have conversations with people who disagree with you constantly, have your ideas challenged, talk to your constituents and see if they're actually liking the way these policies are implemented. I think with what we've dealt with in Los Angeles is the local leaders here just dig their heels in and refuse to move, even though the quality of life here has worsened in recent years, especially after COVID.
And why do you think
we'll
that
see.
is?
We'll see what happens.
Why do they refuse? Because when I look at Los Angeles, I think that they know that if they're a Democrat, unless another better Democrat runs against them, they know that they're safe. So they can continue to make these stupid political moves because they know we're in Los Angeles. Nobody's going to vote for a Republican here. No one's probably even going to vote for an independent here. So we can be as bad crazy as we want, and we're still going to remain in power. And I also want to bring up, speaking of Los Angeles, I'm sure you saw it, this immigration emergency. Now, when I saw Los Angeles immigration emergency, I thought, wow, they understand that they have an illegal immigration emergency. But no, it's quite the opposite. They voted to approve more aid to illegal aliens. Let's play the clip for those who haven't seen it.
Hey, Dana. Well, the 10 million people who live here in LA County are waking up to news this morning that their tax dollars may soon be going to help illegal immigrants and their families. This after a controversial vote last night. The LA County Board of Supervisors voting 4-1 on Tuesday to approve a, quote, immigration emergency declaration in the county in response to recent ICE raids here in LA. Now, that emergency declaration will give LA County the power to provide taxpayer-funded rent relief, legal services, and other assistance to those the county says have been affected by recent ICE raids. Now, the two LA County supervisors who first introduced this declaration say immigrants in LA have been, quote, living under threat from ICE and help is needed.
We have entire families who are destitute because their fathers or mothers were taken from their workplaces and they have no way to pay their rent or put food on the table.
The county will take whatever actions we have within our authority. We need to call on our region to stand up and protect our community members.
Anna, what is this? I mean, this is bizarre even for LA.
So one clarification, and I do have a critique on this, but let me just clarify one thing that's really important for people to know. So this money would effectively help provide assistance to legal American citizens, people who were born here, but let's say the head of household was undocumented and got caught up in an ICE raid and is detained. If that was the breadwinner, the family is really going to struggle, especially in a high cost of living city like Los Angeles. So that's the actual rationale behind the emergency funding. I think
so. I have a question for you though, Anna, because I'm glad that you brought that up, and it's an important distinction. But I would say, what happens if your whole family is made up of American citizens, and you know your dad is an American citizen and he committed a crime and he's going to jail? Now your head of household is in jail. Do those people, do they get any assistance? Or is it just for the illegal aliens that are head of household? Because that to me, there's plenty of families that go through this, either through, jail time or just other things that happen that makes it really difficult to survive in Los Angeles. It just seems very interesting to me that they want to make the distinction. It's about the illegal alien head of household. So your family gets help and rent relief and legal assistance. But the rest of the people in Los Angeles who are American citizens, they don't get the same. I think that's what's enraging a lot of people.
No, that is definitely a fair point. Now, look, this is LA. So LA compared to, let's say, a center right to red city is going to have a more robust social safety net. And so aside from this emergency funding, if you're, finding yourself in hard times, there are definitely various programs to help people out financially. That being said, obviously, this is an extra, I think it was $30 million that's being allocated specifically for families who have been impacted by these ICE raids. What's motivating that is also everything's become nationalized in politics, unfortunately. And so even in local politics, I think the Board of Supervisors is interested in resisting in a way that they can against the Trump administration. So it's also like symbolic politically. But also, look, I think I can't stand the Board of Supervisors and I can't stand the LA City Council because they never address the root problems that lead to the high cost of living in LA. So I'm working on an investigative piece for Real Clear Investigations right now. And through my research, I found out that back in 2020, the LA City Council commissioned a study to look into how many units, meaning residential real estate, residential units are vacant in the city. And we have these luxury high-rise buildings popping up everywhere. It's been the case for many years, and they sit vacant. And back then in 2020, the LA City Council was considering essentially penalizing landlords who just allow these units to sit empty. And you might be wondering to yourself, okay, but why would a landlord benefit from allowing a unit to sit empty? Well, there's actually this like scheme that's been going on where when you apply for the apartment, you have to pay, in some cases, a $45, in some cases, $50 application fee that's not refundable. So they'll literally take in hundreds and hundreds of applications along with that fee, and they don't even accept anyone, right? They just let the vacant units remain vacant. And then when they file for taxes, they can go ahead and claim losses on the real estate, the developers can. And so those types of schemes obviously should be addressed by our local politicians, but they never address that. You know, they keep talking about how we need to build more housing, but there have now been multiple analyses, UCLA, USC, a different one that was commissioned by the LA City Council back in 2020, indicating we actually have more empty units than we do homeless people in the city. So like, you want to talk about affordability, how about less in the rent moratorium direction and more in the, hey, we actually have space, we have the properties, we have the real estate. We need to do something to get rid of these schemes and these like disgusting scams that are taking place in the city right now. But I mean, who knows? I mean, they might be raising money from, you know, these corporate donors, from these landlords. I have no idea. But either way, they're not really addressing serious problems in the city.
Yeah, I think you're right. I also don't think just putting homeless people in any type of housing solves the problem. We've seen them try to put the homeless in hotels, and then, you know, by the time they leave the hotel is also trashed. So it's like, for a lot of people, it's not an issue of just having a roof over your head. It's a lifestyle that many of course, are mentally unstable, drug addicted. That's a big part of the problem. But just putting people in houses, that doesn't solve the problem in LA.
I totally agree. And by the way, there's two distinct homeless populations. And I think that some on the left conflate the two intentionally. And it's very frustrating because there are homeless people who aren't on the streets, right? There are homeless people. It's the mother who left her abusive husband. She's got her kids. She's couch surfing. She's staying with relatives or friends. She needs a home that she can afford, right? And so I definitely see a situation in which someone like her can, you know, receive some help in moving into one of those vacant units. But when it comes to street homelessness, not all, but the vast majority have one of two conditions, maybe even both. And that, yes, you're right, drug addiction, but also severe mental illness. And they're not even necessarily homeless. They have families, they have places they can go to, but they refuse to get help for their mental illness. Maybe it's paranoid schizophrenia, for instance, something very severe. I'm not talking about a small thing. And you need to have a system in place where someone who refuses to get the help because they're unable to make that decision for themselves is essentially institutionalized to get the help they need, so they're not a harm to themselves and to others. But that freaks the left out because they think it's cruel. They think it goes against people's civil liberties. But what about the liberties and the freedoms and the safety of everyone else in the community? You know, and by the way, of the individual who is literally suffering on the streets. You know, that's the argument I would make to them.
Yeah, I've made that argument too, and you're exactly right. I would also say, just speaking of that, I do a lot of work, and I'm a big advocate for the animal rescues in Los Angeles, and I keep up to date with the Starts With One Today, which is a foundation that not only helps animals, but it helps the people of Skid Row. And they go and they volunteer their time to actually help the people in Skid Row and give them the things that they need and give them dog food and other things to make their life livable. A lot of them are kids too. It's really sad. But I think it's just so jarring to me when I see that these No Kings protests in LA with, you know, they got the Pedro Pascal and they've got the celebrities that show up, no kings, but they deliberately avoided Skid Row, right? They want to protest. They want to show like LA, like, you know, us noble white people are going to fight back against Trump. But they won't go just a couple blocks away to Skid Row and see the plight of the people that are living there. That to me is pretty shocking. They don't want to go there. They don't want to be near it. They close that area off and they don't want to talk about it. And it's like, you know, if you've got this savior complex, why wouldn't you start with the people in your community that are actually suffering?
Or you can chew gum and walk at the same time. I mean, I think you do point out a hypocrisy in local political leadership that deserves to be called out. I mean, there are a lot of people suffering in LA. I mean, and I don't want to completely trash LA. I think the people here are incredible. LA is naturally beautiful. California is naturally beautiful. We just have a lack of competent governance. And you see that from higher office, whether it's, the mayor or, the board of supervisors, the city council. There's one local politician who I actually really appreciate. Her name is Tracy Park. She's a city council member. She represents the West Side in LA. And while she's a Democrat, and I'm sure you would have a lot of disagreements with her, she's scrappy, she's smart, she's strategic, and she actually wants to get things done and doesn't care so much about, the virtue signaling her goodness. She's not looking for validation from activists. She wants to improve the quality of life for her constituents. And so I think she's a total keeper, but the exception proves the rule. The rest of the city council has, in my opinion, severe issues.
Your mayor is also awful. I'm glad that we're talking a little bit more about California. I think California Governor Gavin Newsom is one of the worst governors in the country, maybe rivaled by maybe Pritzker, but he's pretty much the worst of the worst. But I'm wondering if you think that Katie Porter could be worse.
No. I mean, look,
you think Katie Porter's better?
Oh my God, Tomi. I don't think even the right appreciates the full extent of Gavin Newsom's depravity and used car salesman demeanor. Like, he destroyed this state. And so, look, Katie Porter's got issues, both substantively and stylistically, as I'm sure you know. Policy-wise, my disagreements with Katie Porter lie in the area of her being very supportive of like money in politics. That kind of stuff really turned me off to her. I can get over it. I maybe can get over it if she's like the best candidate in the race. I'm still waiting to see if Rick Caruso runs, who, yes, is a developer, was a Republican. He's now an independent. But he ran for mayor in LA. And I was impressed with the fact that he had well thought out policy proposals. Now, some on the left really hated those policy proposals and they couldn't get past the fact that he used to be a Republican, so they voted him down. But if he throws his hat in the race,
Mayor Karen Bass, who let their city burn to the ground. What a choice.
Yeah. And look, once she won, I decided, like, let me just see how she does. Like, I, supported Rick Caruso over Karen Bass, but I wanted to wait and see if maybe she would do some good things. She was an improvement from Eric Garcetti, but she obviously, especially when it came to the wildfires that took place in January, made a lot of mistakes and showed, the type of incompetence in leadership that really, really bothers me, especially given how much we pay in taxes in this city. But just going back to the gubernatorial race, the other thing about Katie Porter is she doesn't really seem to like the will of Californian voters when it comes to Prop 36, which I think it was. Neither is Gavin. Exactly. Oh, I can't stand him. He doesn't want to fund Prop 36. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with it, Prop 36 was voted in favor of by, let me rephrase that, 76% of Californians voted in favor of Prop 36. And it was meant to roll back some of the soft on crime policies that were passed by a previous ballot initiative called Prop 47. Yep. Gavin Newsom hates it. Okay. So he doesn't want to provide the adequate funding in order to implement the policies that punish repeat offenders.
Why do you think
and
that
I was really sad to learn, you know why? I'm not going to curse, even though this is probably the top story locally that angers me. He prematurely shut down 4 prisons and we're about to close the 5th. Where are you going to put people, right? So when you close the prisons, you either transfer them, these are state prisons, you either transfer them to county jails. If the county jails are over full, what they do is they just start releasing people. Yep. And they're about to close the 5th state penitentiary. So, earlier you talked about families who are financially harmed in Los Angeles if the head of the household gets arrested and sent to jail. Tomi, no one gets sent to jail in LA.
That is a very good point. It's very hard to get sent to jail. What I think is so weird in California, with Prop 36. And, Gavin obviously wants to run for president. So you'd think, even if he doesn't believe it and doesn't agree with it because he's a demon, you would think that he would at least be, for his political future, he would say, hey, we need to at least appear like we want to be tough on crime because this optically looks awful in the state of California. But you know better than I that in California, what happened is probably around 2010, there was this big push to reduce the prison population. That was like their big initiative, was we must reduce the prison population. And so in order to do that, they just stopped making things felonies. They reduced them to misdemeanors with 47 and 57 and all these other cockamamie felon coddling policies so that they could release people. And so then you had, well, look, we reduced our prison population. Well, yeah, because you put them on the streets. A lot of them also homeless on the streets. And
the crime rate, by the way, by reclassifying felonies into non-serious crimes or misdemeanors, you're able to say that serious crimes, violent felonies are down. But if you actually do the digging, which I've done for another piece that was published for Real Clear Investigations, you'll see that a lot of these offenses used to be considered felonies. By the way, I mean, the state legislature in California on multiple occasions kept rejecting efforts to consider child sex trafficking a felony.
That was bizarre.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Like, does it make me a rabid right winger to think that's crazy? Like, the left, a portion of the left, I don't think they're all like this. I really don't. But like this activist flavor of the left that has been infiltrating local politics are crazy. Like, this is insane. And Democratic voters, I don't think knew what they were getting themselves into, because the way these propositions were sold to us was very different. No one was under any impression that violent felonies were going to be reclassified as, misdemeanors. No one was under the impression that child sex trafficking would be treated as a misdemeanor. But people started waking up, and after multiple attempts, the state legislature finally did pass a law making child sex trafficking a felony.
It's so bizarre to me that it took that much. I also want to ask you, just speaking of Gavin Newsom, I'm going to do my final thoughts on it. I'm sure that you saw, but what's up with him giving his buddies at the utility companies the little golden parachute there, deep inside that SB 254, little fine print that's like, oh yeah, basically, even if you're liable for making our state into a tinderbox, we're going to give you a way out, and you can also pass off all of this to the ratepayers. I'm sure you saw that. I don't think Gavin wants people talking about it, but boy, when the Democrats, yammer on and on about money and politics and all of this, then you got Gavin Newsom with his buddies at these utility companies that we know he gets campaign money from, cutting them little sweetheart deals buried in legislation. That to me is pretty egregious.
PG&E happens to be one of Gavin Newsom's top political donors. He knows where his bread is buttered. And so what he did in response to the campfire, this was in 2018, destroyed an entire community, Paradise, California. It was just so disgusting, because what he did was essentially bail out PG&E, which had faulty equipment that fell onto dry brush, sparking the fire. Their settlement, the victims of the fire, their settlement was specifically tied to the stock value of PG&E. Like, he set it up in a way that ends up forcing the victims of PG&E's greed and terrible behavior to root for them. Like, you have to root for their success in order to get your settlement. It's crazy.
It's so funny because this is just an ongoing story in California. I mean, where's Erin Brockovich when you need her? I actually just rewatched that movie a couple of weeks ago. And again, PG&E, but they're Gavin's friends. He's also a big friend of the teachers union. So a lot of these decisions that he's making, and many other Democrats before him, are all tied to, like you said, where their bread is buttered. So you and I share the disdain for Gavin Newsom. I don't know how we can possibly mount a campaign for president with the way California is. And I think Joe Rogan said it. It's like you destroyed San Francisco, and then you destroy the state of California, and now you want to be promoted to destroy the rest of the country. It's not a great resume that you're delivering to the American people. But boy, he's got that press office that's tweeting out some stuff to own Trump, and he thinks that's going to do it.
I mean, I don't know if that's going to... It'll certainly help him in politics. Like, the memification of American politics is definitely a thing. And I wasn't really into his trolling on social media until, I got to be honest with you, the one where he censored Donald Trump's chin or neck in that cover photo for Time. That was kind of funny. Come on. That was kind of funny. You got to admit it.
That's the thing. It's like they can do it, but it comes from such a, to me, it's so phony and so fake. Like President Trump, people say, well, why does Trump get to do it? This has always been Trump. The way that he acts, the way that he speaks, it's him. You don't have to like it, but it's him. But Gavin, with his, various characters that he's tried to assume over the years. I mean, we started the year with Gavin Newsom sitting down with Charlie Kirk trying to play moderate. And he tried to, and people forget, this is his second attempt at a podcast. He tried to do a podcast with Marshawn Lynch, the Politickin' one. He tried to do that. And that was a bust. And then he moves on to I Am Gavin podcast. And then he wants to be a moderate. And he says, oh, I never said Latinx. Well, we've got, you did. You've tweeted it. And then now he's trying to be Trump opposition one. And it's just, to me, it's like, pick a character. Trump's always been the same guy. Trump's been the same guy. He hasn't been like, well, let me see if I can shift and morph to try to appease this group or appease that group. People love Trump because he is who he is, and you know where you stand with him. Gavin, whatever way the wind blows.
Yeah, I mean, look, he gives off the vibe of a used car salesman, right? And a shapeshifter. So, I mean, you're not going to get me to defend him, really. I can't really think of anything that I would defend him on. He's been a terrible leader. That being said, I want to go back to something you said way earlier in our conversation about, the lack of competition between two parties in LA or California, how Democrats dominate everything. I actually think that is a bad thing, because when you have one party rule, that allows for a lot more corruption. But I also send this message to red states as well. Right now there's this race between Texas and California to redistrict, specifically to freeze out the opposing party. In Texas, obviously, it would freeze out the Democrats. In California, it would further freeze out Republican constituents, Republican voters, and potentially wins by Republican candidates. I think that's disastrous. I really do. Because if you're not being challenged by another party, then that's when you get the Democrats or the Republicans really digging their heels into crappy policy on behalf of donors or because of corruption. So I do worry about that. I don't think it's a good thing when you have a state that's so solidly red or blue that the party in charge gets away with everything, even when they do things that actually harm the quality of life for their constituents.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. In closing, is there somebody that you would like to see in 2028? Is there somebody that you have your eye on that you think is going to rise to the top? Or would you vote for a Republican? I don't take you as somebody who's a big fan of J.D. Vance, but perhaps somebody who might acknowledge the success of Marco Rubio. Was Marco Rubio somebody who's palatable to you?
No, not even a little bit. No,
really?
No. I'm definitely open to voting for a Republican. I mean, even though Rick Caruso is not a Republican anymore, like I would totally vote for him if he ran for governor. And I have voted for him when he ran for mayor. I mean, it really depends. I'm going to wait and see. I want to see what their campaign messaging is. I've been pretty impressed with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene lately. I've been
I never thought I'd heard you say that one.
I know, me too. But like, to her credit, I think she's grown a lot. And I think that she has been given an opportunity to prove that she's not just talking the talk when it comes to being America first. And the fact that she has principles is very appealing to me. I like people with principles. Congressman Thomas Massie, he's also a man of principle, although I think I have a lot more disagreements with him. He's like obviously more libertarian and wants to cut pretty much all spending in ways that I think would be detrimental. But with that being said, I like the fact that he's not just going to bow his head to his party. If he sees a policy he doesn't like, he's going to vote against it. If he sees something he knows isn't in the best interest of his constituents, he's going to vote against it. And again, anyone who's willing to buck a trend, anyone who's willing to push back against their own side really does have my respect, whether they're on the left or the right.
Is there anybody on the left that you see as a rising star?
Not yet. Not yet. I hate to admit that, but not yet.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I've been saying it, I think that the ones that do have a chance, I think they're staying very quiet right now because they don't want to be associated with the dumpster fire that is the Democrat Party. And I think they're going to wait as long as possible before they surface. I think the only person that could potentially do that is a Shapiro. I think that you're going to have to find somebody who's able to win in a purple or even a red state. And I think people think that Andy Beshear in Kentucky is that guy. I don't. I think he's unimpressive. But I think it's going to take someone with those credentials. But I don't think it's going to be one of these far left AOC types. I think that's where maybe the energy is. But I think that oftentimes, and you probably will agree with me on that, I think a lot of times the Democrat Party mistakes people that show up for protests or, different events or is loud on social media, mistakes those people as the people that are going to vote for them or help win an election for them. The people in the swing states, they don't go out and do that. A lot of them aren't on social media. They don't care about Twitter battles. They watch the news every now and again. They're never going to go to a protest for either side. Those are the people that win elections. And I think the left is confusing energy and passion on the fringe for an electoral chance. And I just don't see it. And I think that they're going to continue to turn off those swing state voters that look at the Democrat Party and feel real disconnected from everything it stands for right now.
I hate to say it, but the only voters who really matter at this point are independents that can swing one way or the other. And so I would focus heavily on those voters and what they are communicating as their top issues in the country. I mean, I focused on them mostly in the lead up to the 2024 election. I knew Trump was going to win because Trump, even if I didn't agree with what his solutions were, was the only candidate who was at least addressing the issues that mattered to the voters, to independent voters, especially immigration, the economy, crime. And Democrats wanted to pretend like those things weren't an issue at all. And that didn't help them. So they should stop doing that. They should actually pay attention to what voters are communicating to them, especially swing voters. You're right.
Yeah. And I don't think just showing up with poster boards, I don't think that's going to do it. But they see that as where the energy is. And I think that, quite frankly, they're bored with the kitchen table issues. I don't think those kitchen table issues get them going or give them a spike on social media. I think they're more concerned with that than they are about winning elections, which is fine for me because I would like to see the Democrats lose. But I'm also in the same camp as you, and I've said it before. I would like to see a Democrat Party that does well in this country. Not win elections because I'm a Republican, but I would like to see at least, I think that we need a thriving Democrat Party. I think we need a thriving alternative that's not crazy. I would like to see that because I think that it sharpens the right when you've got a competitive left. And right now it's like, I don't even think it's competitive because of how ridiculous the left is.
I think you're right. The Democratic Party atrophied, in my opinion, because the media was, and I'm talking about legacy media specifically, cable news, with the exception of Fox, New York Times, Washington Post. There was a certain bias, I think, that was more liberal leaning as opposed to conservative. And so when you have these friendly interviews and you're not really being challenged, your political acumen is going to atrophy. And I think that's what happened here with the Democrats. And they need to be open to constructive feedback. It's not an insult. You should see that as an opportunity to improve your policies. But what we've seen from the Democratic leadership in many of the past years is just like this unwillingness to really take ownership of what they have failed on. It's okay. We all make mistakes, but how about recalibrate and offer better solutions? And look, I don't think that they're necessarily bored of the, kitchen table issues. The donors are specifically funding campaigns to ensure that Democratic politicians avoid those kitchen table issues, right? Because it has to do with cost of living. It has to do with maybe passing some policies that redistribute wealth, whatever it is, right? And the donors are like, no, we're not interested in that. Why don't you double down on the culture war stuff? And the culture war stuff is very emotional. Nothing divides the country more than culture war stuff. And it's not necessarily that culture wars are not important. It still addresses important social issues in the country. It's the way that those debates are intentionally framed to get Americans to hate each other, depending on which side they are on. And it disgusts me.
Yeah, well, I think what happened is Democrats got so high on themselves in 2020 when it was the height of woke, and you could throw out any ridiculous leftist bullshit and people would just suck it up. They would post a black square for George Floyd. They would excuse looting and rioting, but then also they would berate you if you went outside without a mask over your mouth and nose. And I think that they just got so high on all of that, just absolute in 2020, and got so excited because it was catching on like wildfire, and everybody wanted to be trans, and everybody wanted to be LGBTQ, BLM, Antifa. Everybody wanted to wear a mask and get 20 boosters, and it's like Democrats this was their high. It was like, yay, we did it. And then people came back to reality, but the Democrats are still very much there in 2020, and they want to relive it, and we're never going to do it again. So I don't think they've caught up.
It was briefly politically advantageous for them until it wasn't. And now I think they're kind of looking for their next strategy or tactic. And they need to listen to the voters and what the voters have been concerned about. You know what I'm saying? And so we'll see. We'll see if they get the message. I'm kind of keeping my powder dry for now, Tomi, because I don't know enough about these Democratic governors who might throw their hat in the race. I'm going to wait and see how, the field develops and what they want to represent as politicians. But for the moment being, I think that the party is still really searching for what their true identity is. And they're looking for someone to be the leader of Trump, of the opposition to the Trump administration. I think for now, it appears that it's Gavin Newsom. And if it remains so, I think the Democrats are in trouble. So we'll see.
Yeah, he's been waiting for his shot for so long. Oh, it's pathetic, actually. I always appreciate you in our conversations over the many years that we've been talking on various platforms. So thank you so much for taking all the time. And I really appreciate all of your insight.
Thank you so much, Tomi. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too. We're just weeks away from the most patriotic award show on television. The Fox Nation Patriot Awards is back and better than ever, hosted by our very own Sean Hannity. There are still tickets left to join us live Thursday, November 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern at the Tilla Center in New York. All you have to do is go to foxnation.com/Patriot Awards. Once you select your ticket, you'll have the option to add on tickets to all the fan experiences, live show tapings for Fox and Friends and The Five, cocktail parties, and so much more. We had a record-setting show last year, and this year is even bigger with surprise guests, amazing new awards, and a special honor for the life and legacy of our friend, Charlie Kirk. You won't want to miss it. Get your tickets now at foxnation.com/Patriot Awards, and we hope to see you there. Catch full episodes on Outkick and Fox Nation. Please do like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless, and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. For more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Just click right here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.